presentation outlines the virtue theory approach to ethical decision making. My name is Gene Rice. I teach philosophy at Fort Hays State University. There are many different ways to categorize theories of ethical decision making, and the presentation here and in a couple of other later presentations we're going to use an organizing system that's a little bit different than what may be found in your book. The system we're going to use here is what is called the three elements of morality: the agents, the acts, and the consequences. So in any particular moral situation, say we're deciding whether or not to tell the truth or tell a lie, we could take an agent-centered action and consider what those moral exemplars, for example, might do. We could look at the act itself, the act of lying, see whether that's moral or immoral, or we could look at the consequences of the action, who's it going to affect, and so forth. The agent-centered approach to moral decision-making then follows a cluster of general ideas about how we ought to make our moral decisions, and we have a little listing there of them. Often the approach emphasizes virtues, particular virtues like honesty, compassion, loyalty. It looks often very closely at the role of the person who's making the decision. So is this person the President of the United States, the mother of a disabled child, my best friend? And as we say here, then it is agent-focused rather than looking, for example, at the particular act, the nature of the act, or its specifics, but it does look very closely, the agent-centered approach looks very closely at the situation. Who's involved? What are their relations? And so these are the kinds of things that an agent-centered theory considers. The agent-centered approach then focuses on virtues, on the roles of the people making the decision, their role in the family and society and so forth, and then the specifics of the situation very closely. One way to kind of sum this all up is to say that the approach focuses on moral exemplars. An exemplar is just an example, someone whose example you would want to follow. In moral terms, then, we have examples like Jesus or the Buddha. We might have more personal examples, like you might ask what your mother would say in a particular situation or about a particular situation. You might consult your rabbi for ethical guidance. These are kind of homegrown examples of the agent-centered approach to moral decision-making. The idea that we can determine our moral course by consulting virtuous people or moral exemplars from the past or even the present is a very old idea, and there are lots of good examples of what we would call virtue theory approaches to ethics. In the West, we have Aristotle's idea of the golden mean, emphasizes virtues like prudence, justice, and courage. In the East, Taoism and Buddhism, Confucianism often emphasize virtues like simplicity, self-discipline, and so forth. There are also, of course, the Christian tradition, which builds on Aristotle's tradition and includes virtues like faith, hope, and love. And then more recently, there's been a revival and an interest in feminist or ethics of care approaches that emphasize family and community.